Ilia Topuria has confirmed that the UFC has promised him a title shot, guys. The debate of if Ilia Topuria is going to get the next title shot seemingly maybe put to bed here. Yes, the UFC don't always follow their promises, but I think they're going to follow this one. Problem here is we have two guys currently campaigning for a title shot when, you know, another guy has been promised. Ilia has been very quiet since he vacated his featherweight title, but this week he's been making a lot of noise, I think trying to get some headlines. Maybe he felt a little nervous that the title shot was slipping away from him. I mean, first, Ilia Topuria was doing a lot of interviews for Spain media and basically said that Islam Makhachev is scared of him, guys.
¿Estás preparándote? ¿Te estás preparando para Islam Makhachev?
Yo me estoy preparando para Islam Makhachev. Todos mis entrenamientos realmente están enfocados para Islam o para Charles. Después de que no quiero pelear con él porque es pequeño, luego cambio de categoría. Digo, bueno, soy pequeño, ahora estoy en categoría, luego que no he ganado lo suficiente. Bueno, son síntomas de miedo, todos lo sabemos, pero es normal. Yo también tendría miedo.
Which, do I think Islam Makhachev is scared? No, I've talked about this before. I genuinely think this is because Islam just doesn't like Ilia, and I just think he doesn't want to give him a title shot or even give him the opportunity. Because as we've talked about, this fight doesn't really do a lot for Islam Makhachev. This is a lot of risk, not a lot of reward. I do think if Islam does go out there and beats Topuria, especially if he finishes him early, I think that Islam's star power could definitely grow from that. But outside of that, I mean, we know that Islam doesn't really care about that kind of thing, so I could kind of understand it, but we definitely still want to see this fight. I mean, come on, like, just make this fight. Like, I don't get what the fucking holdup is at this point, but I feel like we'll probably hear news very soon about who's gonna get the next title shot and all that. Ilia even this week was tweeting at Charles Oliveira, going back and forth with him, saying, Charles, it's better if you stay quiet. You have 10 losses, 5 by knockout, 4 by submission, and 1 by decision. You are the contender while I am the champion, the father of the entire division. I haven't come here to ask anything. Here, I am the one in charge. Yeah, Ilia Topuria, it just sounds like a villain every time this guy is about to fight. But why would you even entertain this? You don't want to fight a guy like Charles Oliveira because, look, I'm not saying Topuria is going to lose to Oliveira. It's just a risky matchup. Those are two high-level guys. Anything could happen, especially Oliveira. You could slip in there and get submitted easily, or you can move the wrong way and get hit with a left hook like Michael Chandler. So why would you even risk it? You want the money fight. You want the belt, right? And Ilia Topuria went out on a press conference and said, look, the UFC have promised him a lightweight title shot, basically saying he would not have vacated his title if he was not promised something like that.
No tengo tan claro cuál va a ser mi siguiente combate. Lo único que tengo claro y la palabra que tengo de parte de la UFC es que mi próximo combate va a ser por el título mundial. Esa ha sido la promesa por dejar el título vacante. Sí, eso es lo único que sé. Pero todo lo que me han prometido me lo han cumplido.
Which is something I've been preaching ever since we heard the news about Ilia Topuria vacating his title. I said in the video, I said, guys, you really think he's going to vacate his title for what? Just to fight a contender without any, guarantees? He's just like, yeah, let me go just throw my title away. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it later. No, these guys have teams. These guys have managers. These guys know how the game works. You got to get some sort of guarantee. And Ilia Topuria 1000% had to get a guarantee. Now, I think what the problem here is that Charles Oliveira might have also gotten a guarantee, right? I mean, it did seem like at the end of that, Islam Makhachev and Adam Moicano fight, it seemed like Oliveira was next definitively, but maybe the UFC actually started making talks with Oliveira and then Ilia Topuria fell out and now they're in a situation with who do they choose? I think most people would much rather see the Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev fight. That is a, super fight that is going to create a lot of pay-per-views, I think. I think that this is going to be an opportunity. Like I said, I've said this a million times on the channel. I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but whoever wins this fight, I think will be a superstar. I think that's just what's going to happen. I mean, of course, there's a scenario where maybe it's not an entertaining fight or it's boring or something like that. I think especially if there's an early finish in this fight, if Ilia Topuria goes out there and knocks out Islam Makhachev, he is a star. I mean, seriously. And we've talked about the matchup before. Like, the big problem here is the weight, right? And I think that I could see Islam Makhachev's point. Have to already accept Ilia's coming in with a disadvantage. It's just the fact, right? I'm not saying he could use that as an excuse, but what I'm trying to say is, like, he's coming in with a disadvantage. And I guess I could see why Islam Makhachev is like, look, I'm literally taking on a guy with a disadvantage. I want the guy at his best, so I get the full credit. And he's like, have him fight a Justin Gaethje. Maybe have him fight Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan or something like that. I get that. But at the same time, Ilia Topuria is coming off of a crazy year where he has done something unfathomable. Like, if you would have told me, like, a couple years ago, someone would go out there and knock out, Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway in the span of, like, 6 months or so, I would have thought you were crazy. But we saw Ilia Topuria do that. So when you have a guy that is, like, just constantly exceeding expectations like Conor did, right? Conor, every single test he had, he basically passed. So he kept moving up the ranks, and you're kind of like, who am I to tell this guy that is just, doing everything, keeps winning, and is able able to do the impossible, who am I to say, oh, he can't do this? And that's kind of where he is finding himself, and that's my opinion on it, and that's why I think you should give him the opportunity. This is the money business, right? Obviously, you fight Gaethje, you slip, and you get knocked out, and now you're a bum, and you're fighting for nothing, and you're matched up with Arman Tsarukyan, and maybe you're on a 2-fight losing streak, and now your career is over. So you got to really play this smart. And like I said, I think the matchup between them two would be interesting because Ilia Topuria is smaller. He has a good ground game. I don't think this is going to be somebody that, you know, Islam Makhachev is going to be able to easily control just because, look, you know, Topuria doesn't have that many limbs to hold down. That's why he struggled with Volkanovski so much. I mean, a lot of these Dagestan wrestlers, they wrap up your leg to get control, but when you have a guy that has shorter legs, it's going to be more difficult. And we've heard people like Jorge Masvidal, of all people, talk about sparring Topuria and getting hurt, getting rocked. I mean, talking about the power this guy has. And not only does Jorge Masvidal fight 25 pounds above Ilia Topuria, I mean, Jorge Masvidal is known to have a really good chin, only getting knocked out once in the UFC, taking so many big shots. So the fact that Jorge Masvidal has said before, like, yo, Topuria has hurt me, I mean, that just shows how hard Topuria is hitting. And he has a puncher's chance. I mean, we've seen Islam get hurt before. He struggled against guys like Dustin Poirier, guys. I think Ilia definitely has a real chance here. Don't know who I'm going to pick. I'm kind of leaning towards Islam right now, but I don't know. I can see myself convincing myself Ilia can get it done. Now, the question here is Ilia Topuria being too much of a diva? Is he calling his shots too much? Which is basically something he's done his whole career, and it so far has worked out for him. Kind of like the Conor McGregor effect, right? I mean, this guy's been calling out Volkanovski ever since he was in the UFC, got the fight there, and fought him, you know, pretty early. And he said, look, I'm going to knock out Volkanovski. I'm going to knock out Max Holloway. He's done both those things. So yes, he's a diva in that way, but guys, I mean, this guy, he is making all these demands. He won't fight Charles Oliveira. He won't fight a lot of these guys. I mean, Ilia Topuria even said recently he doesn't want to go to Spain or Abu Dhabi ever again. When a reporter from Spain asked him, hey, why aren't the UFC going to Spain? He basically said, it's because of the agreement the UFC has with ESPN, the scheduling issue. Because if they bring a numbered event to Spain, it would have to be at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. to be prime time on US television. So I don't see it as very feasible to have everyone on their feet at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. Even as an athlete, I don't see myself competing at that time. I already did it once in Abu Dhabi where we had a fight at such a crazy time, and I don't want to do it again, to be honest. Once again, this is Ilia calling his shot, and here's the thing. The UFC don't usually take well to people, you know, saying like, I'm never doing this, I'm never doing that, I don't care, and calling their shots and acting like they're the boss. At the end of the day, the UFC want to have the control in negotiation, right? They don't want anybody to get too big. They don't want anyone bigger than the UFC, and that's the problem with Conor that they're having right now. Why they're not able to re-sign Conor is because, one, Conor isn't fighting, but number two is because Conor's so big you can never match that money. And that's something we're going to see as the years go on. Like, how many people actually stay in the UFC, right? Does the UFC have to eventually raise their pay? Like, at this point, I think the UFC should be more used to, hey, let me get in, promote my platform, and leave eventually like Ngannou did and get a bigger bag based on the promotion the UFC has done. That's what it seems like to me. So the UFC is going to have to, I think, boost up their pay, because I think we're going to see in the coming years more people do this. And they don't want to have that problem with Ilia Topuria, so I'm curious to see what they're going to do. I wonder if, you know, Ilia Topuria being such a diva in the media, I wonder if the UFC want to humble him and say, nah, guess what? We decide what you're doing. You're fighting Oliveira or you're fighting Gaethje. And look, I would sign up for any of these fights. Ilia Topuria against Gaethje, Oliveira, even Arman Tsarukyan, I wouldn't mind. These are all fun fights, but I guess we're going to have to see. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Check out my last video where I talked about Conor McGregor retiring from fighting, where I just talked about, you know, that whole contract negotiation issue. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are the best fan base in MMA. Hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share, y'all, and I'll see you guys in the next one.